I'd like to share in this video my understanding of the history of HRD in banks and financial institutions in India. I very proudly say that the HRD function, the way it is defined as a leadership function in India, started in mid-70s. State Bank of India, after Larsen and Toubro, was the first one to decide to have a specially dedicated human resource development department. Once the decision was taken at the time by Mr. R.K. Talwar, the associate banks went ahead and appointed HRD managers. The HRD managers all used to get together as a forum and check out the kind of activities they should undertake. I still remember many of them going through a program on managing motivation at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, developing a shared organizational climate and HRD climate inventory, and working out a plan for implementing HRD systems. It was in 1978 when IIM Ahmedabad held the first workshop on human resource development. Mr. Shanmugam, who was appointed as Chief General Manager of State Bank of India, happened to attend this, and he made sure that the spirit of human resource development is understood and implemented in the bank. In fact, later when he became the managing director of the State Bank of Patiala, he implemented a reasonably good level of the HRD oriented systems in State Bank of Patiala. I still remember visiting them and looking at the top management styles, looking at the organizational climate, giving him feedback about the kind of HRD climate that exists and so on. In early 80s, the State Bank of India took almost one full year to experiment with a new appraisal system that they introduced in the bank. So much before they introduced it, in one region, they implemented it almost across a year. So after these results were available, they extended it to the entire Ahmedabad circle and later on to the bank. So the progress was step by step. A large number of HRD people were trained. They participated in innovative HR practices and so on. Bank of Baroda came up with a very interesting performance appraisal system in early 80s itself. And Canara Bank in mid 80s is known for introducing a diary system of recording significant events in their performance appraisal. So thus, if you look at the banks, I think they have mastered human resources development in 80s and have done a marvelous job in 80s. But what happened in 90s? Why is it that HRD, which used to be a lead function in these banks, have gone to the background and it has got routinized? Two or three things happened. In 90s, I'm sure most of you will recollect, post-liberalization, there was pressure on performance, which means financial performance. You might recollect State Bank of India was perhaps the first one to appoint McKinsey, and McKinsey made recommendations of reorganizing State Bank with a lot of customer focus and very customer-centric systems, debureaucratizing the bank and taking it closer to the customer, reducing the delays, increasing the speed of service, and so many things that have happened. So the focus of the banks and financial institutions in 90s shifted to performance, financial performance, and short-term, I think, accomplishment. They had to show that they made a lot of difference in terms of achieving the goals. During this period, this was a golden opportunity for a good HR person to retune the entire HR systems to be customer-centric and business-centric. Very unfortunately, what happened was the group of people who were trained in HRD in 80s were not available, and they were perhaps transferred, and number of new people came, and these new people were able to catch hold of tangibles. In a world which is tangible managed, which means that you have to really look at tangibles, what became important for HRD managers is capacity utilization of the training center, per employee mandates of training that is given, and the number of performance appraisal forms that are received on time. So I think these tangibles took priority over the spirit of HRD, which is competence building, commitment building, and culture building. Very unfortunately, these tangibles continued, and intangibles or building intellectual kind of an atmosphere became very secondary. There are, of course, some institutions which have done a marvelous job. For example, I must mention ILFS Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services, which was a small company at the time with just about 200 people. They initiated a new performance-linked pay system. This was almost in mid 90s, which was later, I think, borrowed, or which was later further improved by HDFC and a large number of other institutions and so on. So it is not that there were no innovations. There were innovations, but what happened was a large public sector banks got sucked into, I think, a little bit of the routines and tangibles, and as a result, the spirit part of it got neglected. Come 10 or 15 years later, that is starting from something around 2005 to 2015, in the last one decade, these tangible obsession with tangibles and at the same time questions about, I think, finding intangibles pushed a large number of not so professionally trained HR managers to bank on consultants. So you will find between 2005 and 2015, many banks started using consultants for reviewing the performance appraisal system or starting a competency building exercises, maybe in a select few cases wrongly starting the 360-degree feedback or assessment and development centers and so on. The right things that they have done were, a good number of them started a leadership development programs using the places like the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad, at Bangalore, Calcutta, Indian School of Business and so on. So wherever these institutions were used for improving the HR through leadership development programs, there was certainly certain amount of benefit. So some good things happened, but not everything was the way I think it should have been done. So it is high time that every bank should look at what is good in the current way in which the HR systems are being implemented, the competencies of their own HR staff, the learning attitude of the line managers, the styles of top management, and even the competencies of some of these banks which have steering committees. The steering committees, I am not very sure, are being properly used. For example, I am in some of these committees, and quite often I am asked to attend these meetings only for routine matters rather than for any spiritual kind of things. So I think the audit also should look at the role of the board, the role of the steering committees, role of HR departments, role of top management, and the role of systems and strategies and things like that. So it is high time that every bank conducts a self-renewal workshop and understand where they stand. And it's not a rocket science. It is possible to have a entire HR system renewal step by step conducted in a bank by holding a series of self-renewal exercises. Certainly, I think one can take outside help, but I think these should be done with the active involvement of insiders and so on. I'm sure, given the strengths of a banking system, banks are institutions where people work with people. Ultimate client is the person, and the people who help the people to develop as entrepreneurs or assess their creditworthiness and make sure that people return whatever they have borrowed, and also make sure that a large number of people utilize the bank, like what I think today the Prime Minister is talking about, that I think if we can get most of the people across the country to bank with you, that establishes a new channel for growth and development of all 1.3 billion people in this country and so on. So if you want to do any such kind of a thing, banks are placed in a wonderful kind of a situation because they deal with people and they have a phenomenal amount of knowledge of people and so on. So I hope financial institutions and banks will undertake this exercise of improving and strengthening their HRD and making HR as a lead function. So all the best, and we look forward to do a lot more. And I would strongly recommend you to read the Khandelwal Committee report, which lists a whole lot of things that any bank can do. Thank you very much, and all the best from TVRLS. If any of you want to have any questions, you can write to me, tvrao tvrao.com. That is my mail ID. It will be available on YouTube. All the best. Bye.